Hi everyone, welcome. It's great to have you with us. I hope you had a good time last week with Miss Kristen. She's coming back actually today to do the craft for us. And we're talking today about the Holy Spirit. But before we get stuck in, I wonder if you could write down 3 words to describe the Holy Spirit. Now, I wrote wind, fire and dove. That's because the Holy Spirit appears in these forms in different places in the Bible. Now I know you can't see wind itself, but you can see its effects, can't you? Before we get into today's passage in Acts, let's have a quick overview of what the Holy Spirit has been doing throughout the Bible.
If you've ever heard the phrase, the Holy Spirit, and you want to know what it means, where do you start?
Well, you have to start on page 1 of the Bible, where the uncreated world is depicted as this dark, chaotic place, but then above the chaos, God's Spirit is there, hovering, ready to bring about life and order and beauty.
Okay, but what is God's Spirit?
Yeah, so the Spirit is the way the biblical authors talk about God's personal presence. The Hebrew word is ruach.
Ruach.
Yeah, you got to clear your throat at the end.
So what is it?
Well, ruach can refer to a number of different things, but what they all have in common is energy.
Energy, how so?
So there's an invisible energy that makes the clouds move or the tree branches sway.
Right, wind.
So in Hebrew, that's ruach.
Okay.
Now take a big breath. So you feel that inside you.
Yeah, the air?
Well, specifically the energy, right? The vitality in your body that you get from breathing deeply, that too is ruach. And this is the same word used in the Bible to describe God's personal presence. Just like wind and breath are invisible, God's Spirit is invisible. Wind is powerful, and so God's Spirit is powerful. And just as breath keeps us alive, so God's Spirit sustains all of life.
Yeah, ruach.
Now, as we continue on in the story of the Bible, we see God's Ruach giving special empowerment to people for specific tasks. The first person in the Bible this happens to is Joseph.
God's Spirit enables him to understand and interpret dreams.
And then it happens to this guy named Bezalel, and he's an artist.
God's Spirit empowers him with wisdom and skills. He's given creative genius to make beautiful things in the tabernacle.
And we also see God's Ruach empower a group of people called the prophets.
They're able to see what's happening in history from God's point of view.
That's exactly right. And here's the problem as the prophets saw it. While God's Ruach had created a really good world, humans have given in to evil. They've unleashed chaos into it through their injustice.
A new type of disorder.
Yes, and the prophet said the Spirit would come, just like in Genesis 1, but now to transform the human heart, to empower people to truly love God and others.
How will this new act of God's Spirit happen?
Well, centuries pass, and we are introduced to Jesus. And at the beginning of his mission, there's this beautiful scene where Jesus is being baptized in the waters of the Jordan River.
Yeah, the sky opens up and God's Spirit comes and rests on him like a bird.
This story is saying that God's Spirit is empowering Jesus to begin the new creation. And we see this happening when he heals people or forgives their sins. He's creating life where there once was death.
Now, Israel's religious leaders oppose Jesus, and they eventually have him killed.
But even here, God's Spirit is at work. The earliest disciples of Jesus, who saw him alive from the dead, said it was God's energizing Spirit that raised Jesus.
This is the beginning of new creation.
Yes, and it's still going. When Jesus appeared to his closest followers, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit."
And soon after that, the Spirit powerfully comes on all of his disciples.
So that they can become a part of this new creation and share the good news and learn how to live by the energy and influence of God's Spirit.
I wonder if you can write 3 more words down to describe the Holy Spirit after that video. You might want to change your mind and cross one of the other ones out. That's fine. The Holy Spirit has done amazing things, hasn't he? Write a few descriptions of him down, if you can. He's been creating wonderful newness right from the beginning, helping people be creative too. And he's even raised Jesus from the dead, given him new life. But now we're going to focus on the first part of Acts chapter 2. And I'm going to describe the Holy Spirit using 3 words beginning with P. I wonder if you can guess what they are while you're watching this quick recap.
So this is where we are in the story.
God made a perfect world.
People messed it up, but God had a plan to rescue them. He sent his son, Jesus,
To save everybody.
so we could be with him. And to save us, Jesus had to beat death.
After he did that, he went to heaven. But first he told his friends
The disciples,
to wait.
because he was going to send them a gift, the Holy Spirit. So they waited. Even when there was a giant party going on outside, which was called Pentecost, with people from all over the world.
The disciples stayed together.
Inside, waiting. Suddenly there was a loud noise.
Like a really strong wind.
It must have been pretty loud because lots of people came to see what was going on. Whoosh! Then fire came down from heaven and landed on top of people's heads.
This wasn't like the fire we're used to.
It didn't burn them. This fire was way cooler. See what we did there? The disciples started speaking different languages,
Languages they didn't even know.
or hadn't until then.
They spoke Greek, Hebrew, Arabic.
All sorts of languages.
It was a miracle.
A lot of people were amazed.
Some were a little confused.
And some didn't know what to think, but the disciples knew it was a special day. A guy named Peter spoke up. He reminded the crowd of who Jesus was.
And God's rescue plan for them.
And lots and lots and lots of people believed.
Anyone who believes in Jesus has the Holy Spirit.
I believe.
I believe. I believe.
I believe.
I believe.
I believe. I believe.
God had given them the Holy Spirit.
And we can have the Holy Spirit too. But that's not the end of the story.
I wonder if you managed to get any of those words beginning with P. Here are my 3 to describe the Holy Spirit from the beginning of Acts chapter 2. Power, presence, and promise. Let's think about power for a moment. You might have written down powerful. God's power being used through the Holy Spirit to enable people to do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do. Both kind of, we saw that, didn't we? Through Joseph being able to interpret dreams. All throughout the Bible, but in Acts chapter 2, we see the disciples being able to speak languages that they haven't even learned. I mean, I struggled to learn French and a tiny bit of Spanish. These guys are speaking fluently in a language that they have not learned. That is God's power at work in them. And it's power that is sending a message, isn't it? The message that they're sending out is God is now going to speak and be impacting the whole world, and not just the Jewish nation of Israel. This message and good news of Jesus is going to spread throughout the world into lots of different countries, and that means lots of different languages. Do you remember last time that the disciples were told that they would go they would go from their local area out into the wider county and then into their country and then across the world? God was sending them to the very ends of the earth with the good news of Jesus. And this sending of the Holy Spirit with power enables them to do that. But they're not going on their own, are they? They're not being sent out to the ends of the earth, a place that they don't know, without God's presence. God being with them real way. Isn't that amazing? God living with his people inside of each one of us to empower us to do amazing things too. He gives us the power to speak about Jesus to our friends, to people who don't know him. Now, we might not be able to suddenly speak a language that we haven't learned, but God does empower us to do amazing things. But this is a fulfillment of a promise. God had promised in the Old Testament his Holy Spirit would come on people. And so this is a fulfillment of a promise. The Holy Spirit is like a promise to us that we have been saved, that Jesus has really died, has really risen, is alive, and God's presence is with us, and that we belong to him and we are going to be with him if we trust in Jesus. So we've got this wonderful power and presence and promise from God. The Holy Spirit really is amazing. We don't always understand everything about him, but he is amazing. Have a look back over the words that you have written earlier on. I wonder if you want to add any more. We're going to have a craft now where you could use some of those words that you've written down.
Hello, crafty crafters. Yeah, we'll go with that. Are you ready for some fun Pentecost action? In the story of Pentecost, of course, the Holy Spirit was seen as little tongues of flame that were on top of the disciples' heads. So we're going to make our own little tongues of flame. Now, you can get as elaborate or as basic as you like. We'll show you the basic version for timing purposes right now, but you can decorate this as much as you want. So we're going to start with some strips of paper, and of course you can use any color. I used red because it's a Pentecost color, and you will also need tape or glue or a stapler. I like the stapler because you don't have to wait for it to dry, and it doesn't get stuck in your hair as much as tape. But whatever adhesive material you choose to use, go ahead. If you want to add some decoration, you'll want some markers or perhaps some stickers. And you're definitely going to need some scissors. So we will begin by making the headband itself. This is very simple. You have your strips of paper and you're going to just staple them and measure to fit your child's head. Or your own if you're going to make it for yourself. So you're just going to make sure that it goes around your head. And evidently my ponytail is large enough that I need an extra one there. Then we're going to add our little tongue of flame. So for that, again, if you want to have a purple flame, go for it. But we'll use a piece of yellow paper just because it's kind of flamey. And we're going to cut out a little fiery candle-like shape. In fact, if you want to be real fun and fancy, you could even do a yellow and put it on top of an orange one and make it extra fiery. Maybe throw in some red and make it real fiery. So, however you prefer to do it. So once we've got our little flaming tongue here, we're going to attach the flaming tongue to the headband portion. I encourage you to add a caption or a verse to this as well to remind yourself, of course, of why you have this random flame on a headband. And then, once you've got that all together, if you want to add some glitter, some sparkles, some stickers, go for that. Then you've got your little, or not so little if you have a larger head, tongue of flame headband. Ta-da!
never be alone. A guide on this adventure to help us grow in holiness. A true and living compass who leads us to what's best. Our help to understand your word. Our help who gives us strength to serve. Our help so we can love you more. We need your Holy Spirit, Lord. Your Spirit lives inside, and He points us to your truth, shining like a flashlight, revealing more of you. He fills us with your love, Lord, and He's come to guarantee that God is always with us, and He will always be. Our help to understand your word. Our help who gives us strength to serve. Our help so we can love you more. We need your Holy Spirit, Lord. We need your Holy Spirit, Lord. To understand your word, who gives us strength to serve, so we can love you more. We need your Holy Spirit. Our help to understand your word. Our help who gives us strength to serve. Our help so we can love you more. We need your Holy Spirit, Lord. We need your Spirit, Lord. You are our help.
Well, I hope that you've learned something about the Holy Spirit today. But we don't want to just keep that information in our heads, do we? And we want to be able to live differently because of what God is teaching us. So have a think for a moment about what difference the Holy Spirit makes to you. If you have God's power living inside of you, if God is with you each and every day and never leaves you, and He fulfills His promises, He keeps every promise that He ever makes, what difference will that make to you? I think for me, if I'm able to remember that, then it will keep me trusting God and keep me praying to Him, remembering that He is good and willing me on to do good things for Him. And He's given His power so that He can enable me to do the things that He wants me to do, even when they're hard. So you have a think about what the Holy Spirit's power and presence and promise mean for you. Well, we're going to now head back to the main service where we're going to join the rest of the church family, and we're going to, I think, do some praying there too. I'll see you there in a bit.